Hey guys, this is Miss Johnson. I wanted to make this video so that you guys could see what you were supposed to do with this Digital Learning Day packet that I gave you yesterday and that you're turning in tomorrow, Wednesday. So I was just going to go through it, show you exactly what I meant when you needed to read through the article and complete the 3-level guide. I was also going to go ahead and start giving out some answers and really try to help you guys. This might be a very good video to come back to closer to our test, the midterm, and your final exam to review, because I'm going to be going over the triangular trade a lot in this video. I'm posting on eClass, so it'll be up all semester. And who knows, if you watch this video, maybe I will give you some bonus points on an assignment or on a test or something like that. So let's go ahead and get started on this Digital Learning Day packet. Alright, so obviously this one is Triangular Trade 3-level guide. So on the first page you have your article front and back, and then on the next page you have your actual 3-level guide. And we're going to spend a minute looking at this to see what we're going to have to do after we read our article. So 3-level guide, there's obviously 3 levels. You have your set 1, your set 2, and on the back, you have your set 3, all right? So what are we going to have to do? We're going to have to analyze each statement. Basically, that means look at it, read it, and think about it. Actually give it some thought. We're going to mark each statement as true or false, and then we're going to have to explain why we think that's the answer, true or false. And we're going to have to, this is the part where we struggle, cite actual textual evidence. All right, where are we going to get that textual evidence? Article. All right, that's why this article is super important. All right, so our first set is basic recall. We're going to be looking in the text for this statement exactly. And then when we find it, we're just going to put the paragraph that this one's in as our textual evidence. Same thing for 2, 3, and 4. For the second set, we're going to have to make an inference because these statements, unlike the first set, are not word for word found in our text. They're implied. They are more next conclusion statements. They're what you get to after you read this article. That's where the analyzing is going to come from, because we're going to have to analyze the article and think, okay, what does that mean? What would happen next? All right, so that's set 2. Set 3, well, here, I'll go ahead and read this, is an opinion and requires a more elaborate explanation. So looking at the back at some of these statements, what this means is these are not explicitly in our text either. However, we can tell if they are true or false based on the text. So it's just a little bit more difficult or more higher level than set 2, but it is the same thing. So before we can answer any of these true, false, or cite textual evidence, we need to read our packet. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read through it completely. I'm going to annotate like I normally would. So if you don't need to read through this with me, you can go ahead and fast forward the video. But if you would like to read through it with me and see how I would annotate it, please feel free to stick around. All right. So reading this document, let me get rid of the questions underneath. I have my pen ready to go for annotations. And then I also have my highlighter in case I need that as well. So let's go ahead and start reading. The transatlantic slave trade. All right, right off, transatlantic. I'm going to note that that's probably going to have to do with the Atlantic Ocean. Also known as triangular trade. All right, triangular trade. I'm just putting a triangle up here because triangular trade, what else is it going to be? Began in the Americas after the Columbian Exchange. All right, I'm not sure what Columbian Exchange is yet, but we'll find out. Due to the newly discovered land for the Europeans, because the Native Americans had been there before and had been there for a long time, as well as the highly arable, oh, I know that word, I know arable, environment for crops and demand such as sugarcane, which is sugar. This would lead to a terrible period for mankind. All right, mankind might be a word some of us struggle with, and that's okay. So what does that word mean? It means humans. All right, awesome. So one paragraph down. Causes. The land was very fertile and could support high yields of crops. So high yields. What does that mean? That means a lot of something. So a lot of crops, a lot of plants. This could be grown and resold back to Europe, making the home countries very wealthy. So home countries, all right. Just in case we don't know, the home countries are England, Spain, France, and Portugal. There were others that participated in the transatlantic slave trade or triangular trade, but those are the three that we're going to focus on, especially Spain and Portugal. However, there was a lot of work for the invading Europeans. First of all, a lot of the land was settled by the indigenous groups. All right, indigenous groups. We might not know what that means, so let's clarify that real quick. That means native people. Indigenous groups or indigenous people, the native people, the people who have lived there for a very, very, very long time, long before the Europeans. Secondly, much of the best land was heavily forested by jungle and other terrain. If we don't know what terrain means, it just means land. That would not be easily cleared. Thirdly, the work was not easy. The act of harvesting crops such as sugarcane was extremely difficult. Finally, the act of planting and farming the crops would cause many people to pass away from disease spread by insects that live within the heavy tropical areas. All right, I haven't done this yet, but let's go back and highlight a couple things that seem kind of important. All right, so kind of working our way backwards, that last one seems very important. The act of planting and farming the crops would cause many people to pass away from disease spread by insects that live within heavily tropical areas. So, I don't know, there's just something about that that seems super important to me. So I'm going to highlight it real quick, and then we're going to, like I said, work backwards. Thirdly, work was not easy. Yeah, that's important, probably. Secondly, much of the best land was heavily forested by jungle, not easily cleared. Maybe, but we'll see. First, a lot of the land was already settled by a lot of land being settled by the indigenous peoples. Absolutely, because the land was already claimed. The land was already owned by someone, and the Europeans came in and said, hey, this land's ours now. Bye. Let's see, anything else? The land being very fertile and could support high yields of crops really goes with this next one. So I'm going to kind of jump from crops right here and go over here because I don't want my whole paragraph to be pink. I like having little breaks in between the highlights so that I know what's important and what's not. So I'm just going to kind of make that little jump right there so that I know I can skip this little part right here, but I need to kind of connect here. All right, so that looks good to me. Let's keep moving. All right, let me move this up. Sorry, it's running into my little desktop thing that I have on my desk. The initially, in case we don't know, means first. Enslaved group were the indigenous Americans. They largely died off from disease. Right, I know right off the bat. whenever we talk about a whole group of people being enslaved or turned into slaves, that's going to be important. But it's also super important that they died largely of disease. I'm going to put a box around that because I feel like that might come into play later, especially with this little image right here. It looks like there's some kind of doctor taking care of somebody really sick, so I bet it has something to do with that. I'm going to wait a minute to read this. Europeans carried many diseases that the indigenous Americans would pass away from. Estimates from historians report that nearly 90% of natives would pass away. Okay, that's huge. So I'm going to put a box around 90. And then I'm going to highlight historians report that nearly 90% of natives would pass away. And I'm going to just kind of draw an arrow to the word diseases so that I know that's what they're passing away from. That's a lot of people, by the way. That means that 90 out of 100 people would pass away from European diseases. That's a lot. A lot. Additionally, many natives were used to the land and could easily escape the plantation economy. Because of this, European settlers looked for a better alternative. All right. From what I'm getting from this paragraph right here is that natives were not easily enslaved. But the Europeans still didn't want to do the work. So my question is, who else could they get to do the work? We're going to find out. They began to trade with Africa. At first, they traded their manufactured products for slave laborers, usually prisoners of war. All right, that's huge. They traded their manufactured products for slave laborers, usually prisoners of war. Those manufactured products would be mostly guns, ammo, cloth, and things like that, especially in the beginning. Oh, well, look at that. That's the next sentence. The Europeans would trade manufactured products such as guns and firearms for human life. This later turned more violent as many people in Africa were forcibly enslaved. All right, I'm going to highlight this as well. So it is very possible that the Europeans selling the people of Africa these firearms and guns would backfire on them. All right, so I'm going to kind of make a note of that. All right, so we're done with the first page. Let's flip it over. All right. The Middle Passage, probably important, or the Atlantic Ocean was a dangerous journey for many enslaved Africans. They were chained together and not given freedom such as privately using a restroom. As a result, many Africans would perish. All right, perish is kind of a big word. It's a high-level word. So what does it mean? It means to pass away from, to die from. And these enslaved Africans would perish from disease. So remember on the last page we talked about disease? Yep. So it's happening to the enslaved Africans. Others tried to use forms such as forms of disobedience. So, disobedience, not following, going off the page there, rules or orders. So they were just saying, nope, not going to do that. Such as a hunger strike. What's a hunger strike? Hunger strike. Purposely not eating. Or starving. But it's on purpose. When you go on a hunger strike, you are purposely not eating. You're purposely starving yourself. Or even jumping into the Atlantic as a form of protest. And of course, those that would jump into the Atlantic, they probably weren't rescued. They probably died or passed away in the water at some point. These ships were densely packed, there's that word densely again, and caused as many as 30% to pass away during the journey. Alright, so let's go back with our highlighter. So this middle passage right here, let's look at that. Middle passage, it was very dangerous. So again, I don't want to highlight this entire paragraph, so I'm just going to do this. Okay. They were chained together, not given freedom, such as privately, so no freedoms. We could kind of guess that from the enslaved part of enslaved Africans. Unfortunately, that would become a reality for many of them and would stay a reality for most of them for the rest of their lives. As a result, many Africans would perish from disease. That's probably important. I might need that later, so there's a highlight. Others tried to use forms of disobedience. Yeah, also probably important, such as a hunger strike or even jumping into the Atlantic. These ships were densely packed. That's definitely important. And as many as 30% to pass away during the journey. That's a lot of deaths. So, like our 90% on the previous page, 30%, that's 30 out of 100 people would pass away on the middle passage of the transatlantic slave trade, or the triangular trade. Many of the Africans were imported. There's a vocabulary word from last semester. Imported means brought into a country. Export means to send out of a country. Import means to bring into a country. So the enslaved Africans were exported from Africa, imported to the Caribbean and Brazil because of the arable land. Okay, let's go ahead and highlight that because I bet that's going to become important. And we already reviewed what arable land is. This land was great at agriculture. All right, again, there's that word. We're not going to be able to forget that word. We need to know it, that farm or farming. The main source of income, or let's say money, for the European plantation owners. All right, I don't know if we've gone over this word plantation yet, but let's do it just in case. Plantation means really big farm. Like really big, like huge, absolutely huge. If a farm, let's go to the bottom of this page, is about this size, all right, let's say, a plantation would be that size. They're huge compared to a normal farm, so that's why they have a different name than just farm. Sugar would be used to sweeten another crop grown in the Americas for the European market. Coffee. All right. Yep. Main source of income for the European plantation owners would be from sugar cane. That's probably important. Main source of income. Anytime we see main, and especially the source of money, we definitely know that that's going to be very important. All right. Sugar would be used to sweeten another crop grown in the Americas. Okay. I'm just going to highlight the word coffee. With the crops grown from the Africans in the New World. Okay, pause, because we need to clarify this. Pretend I didn't draw this down here. All right, Let me even get a different color pen so that we know this is super important. All right, sorry if my voice got a little bit low there. I just got a new color pen. All right, so let me put a little star right there so you know to look somewhere else. So this concept of new world, all right, came about because North America, South America, and the Caribbean were considered brand new in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s. It went right against the idea of old world. All right, so I would very much recommend writing this on your paper too. So if the new world was one, North America, South America, and the Caribbean, and we call it New World because it was new to the Europeans. The Europeans had sailed this way and they found what was new to them. So they called it New World. Old World would then have to be Europe, Africa, Asia. Because those were the lands that the Europeans had already known of for quite some time, for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, in fact. Nobody had been over to North America or South America, so they were brand new. Nobody knew about them. So even though they'd been there just as long as Europe and Africa and Asia, it was new to the Europeans, so they called it the New World. All right, you'll hear us use that term a lot. All right, let's see. With the crops grown from the Americans in the New World, they sent it back to Europe to be manufactured and later sold. Okay, so these crops that are grown by the enslaved Africans in the New World, they were sent back to Europe to be manufactured and later sold. All right, so this next sentence, with this source of revenue, Europeans would purchase more slaves from Africa to be later sold. Okay? Great. It's starting to create a circle or a pattern. All right, so this revenue, or this word you're more familiar with, profit, that extra money, Europeans would purchase more slaves from Africa to be later sold. And of course, again, when you sell something, what are you going to make? You're going to make more money. So most of this triangular trade is based on what? Tell me what you think this is based on. What was the whole purpose? I'll give you about 5 to 8 seconds. If you need more time, just pause it, but the real reason or the real cause of this triangular trade was money. Money. You can save resources, but at the end of the day, what happened to those resources? They were sold for money. It mostly comes down to money. All right, we're going to get into this picture in a second. Let's read this last paragraph. The lasting impact. Okay, I just know this as a teacher. Anytime you see the words lasting impact, you need to know that word, or you need to know what comes after it. All right, so lasting impact. So as many as 1 in 5 Latin Americans can claim some kind of ancestry to, and this says Latin America, that's incorrect. So you can cross out Latin America, to Europe. To Europe. So that's going to be one of our lasting impact. 1 in 5 Latin Americans can claim some kind of ancestry to Europe. Europeans created a social order where people, and social order, if you need to think about this, social order means how you view people. So like at school, you have the popular kid, the one that everybody's friends with, and then you have the people underneath him or her, or it could be both. And then they have those people underneath them, and it's just, it creates this kind of pyramid structure. where you go from the popular or best down to, let me make that more of a pyramid here, hold on, down to not popular. So the Europeans created this kind of social order where people of pure European descent were considered the best, following a half European and then either indigenous or African mix, and the lowest being either pure Native American or African. All right, so let's draw this out because it's kind of hard to understand. So at the top of our Latin American social order, all right, at the top we would have pure European. So someone who was either born in Europe or someone who was born in Latin America, but two parents that were both originally from Europe. All right, so below pure European, you would have 50% European and either 50% Native or 50% African. All right, so mom or dad was European and mom or dad was either Native or African. And then finally, at the unfortunate not popular spot of our social order, we had 100% Native or 100% African. Now, this social order doesn't exist today, but we do see some kind of lasting effect where people still do try to claim some kind of European ancestry sometimes, or they try to claim some kind of, well, I'm better than you because something, who knows what it is. So we do still see it, but remember, this is back in around the 1500s. So the 1500s to, I'd say about the 1800s is when this might have started to change. All right, so last thing before we go do our 3-level guide, we're going to look at this map right here. So before we do anything, I want to point this out. So number 1, number 2, and over here, number 3. Because number 3 is both North America and South America. All right. Why is this called the triangular trade? Because if you look at the trade routes and how it becomes a repeating pattern, it makes a triangle. So you start here in Europe, you go down to Africa to step number 2. And you're bringing those manufactured goods with you. Once you're done with your trading in Africa, you go to Latin America. Sometimes you might go up here, sometimes you might go over here to Mexico, sometimes Panama, sometimes down here in Brazil, it just depends, but you're still going to Latin America. You drop off the slaves that you brought with you from Africa. Then you take your ship, you load it up with all of these raw materials like coffee and sugar cane, and you go right back to Europe, bringing those raw goods with you. So it creates a triangle. I'm going to be going over that a whole lot during this unit, so if you don't get that, it's okay. You will by the end of this unit. All right? So if you need to rewatch any of that, now's a good time to rewind and go back and make sure that you have everything, because I am going to move on to our 3-level guide. All right, let me move this paper underneath, and we are going to start with set 1. So again, we're going to mark each statement as true or false, And then we're going to explain why we believe it's true or false, citing textual evidence. So let's start with number 1. The land in the New World is capable of supporting many plants. All right, well, if I look back in our text, I would like to look right here. The land was very fertile and could support high yields of crops. Does that support the statement, the land in the New World is capable of supporting many plants? It does. So I'm going to put T for true, and then I'm also going to put paragraph 2 as my citation, because if we look, and let me get another pen. All right, if we look, this is paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, 4, flip it over, 5, 6, 7, and then finally 8. All right, so that sentence that I'm using as my citation for number 1, land in the New World is capable of supporting many plants, is right here. All right, let's go on to number 2. Native Americans resisted European disease. So this word resisted, that meant Native Americans did not die of European disease. They did not get sick. All right, well, let's go look at our text. All right. Paragraph 3, it's pretty much our first sentence. The initially enslaved group were the indigenous Americans. They largely died off from disease. Europeans carried many diseases that the indigenous Americans would pass away from. So, to me, Native Americans resisted? No. They were very, very commonly sick from European diseases. So this is a definite false statement, and we have our evidence in paragraph 3. All right, let's look at number 3. The Columbian Exchange opened up new markets due to new land. All right, well, if I think about this and I look back at my text, all right, I'm going to just kind of scan it. I'm not seeing a whole lot yet. Oh, but wait a second, wait, up here. All right, due to the newly discovered land, all right, and this, our little thing says, Columbian Exchange opened up new markets due to new land for the Europeans, as well as the highly arable environment for crops such in demand, such as sugarcane. Well, it doesn't say market exactly, but I'm assuming that says for crops in demand, such as sugarcane, and there were other things like coffee that they hadn't had before. Wouldn't that be opening up a new market, a new resource to trade? Yeah, it definitely would. So for 3, true, and I would cite paragraph 1. All right, finally, number 4, many Latin Americans today are of pure European ancestry. All right, I definitely remember that was on our back page, so let's go there. The lasting impact of the slave trade is currently seen today. As many as 1 in 5 Latin Americans can claim some ancestry to Latin America. Okay, so they're not pure European, but they do have some kind of European background. So this is false because of this. So I'm going to cite, what was that? Paragraph 8. All right, and I'm done with set 1. Let's move on to set 2, inferences. This is where it gets a little bit more tricky. Slaves were imported more to the Caribbean and Brazil than Mexico. All right, well, I do remember this specifically, all right, because I remember it using the word imported. Many of the Africans were imported to the Caribbean and Brazil because of the arable land. Well, I know that Mexico didn't really have a whole lot of arable land. It has some, but not like the Caribbean and Brazil. So I'm going to assume that based on paragraph 6, this is true. Because paragraph 6 many Africans were imported to the Caribbean and Brazil because of the arable land. Number 6, the European slave traders lost GDP because of poor treatment in the Middle Passage. All right, well, going back to our last economy unit, GDP means money. So I need to look back and see, was there any evidence that the slave traders, European slave traders, would lose money because of the Middle Passage? And there definitely is, because this whole 5th paragraph, the Middle Passage, was dangerous, and as many as 30% would pass away during the journey, either because they would die from disease, they would try to commit suicide by hunger strike or jumping into the Atlantic, and some were just not strong enough to be able to make that journey all the way from Africa to the Americas. So for number 6, that is absolutely true. All right, because paragraph 5 the Middle Passage was a dangerous journey. So here's my evidence. The Middle Passage was a dangerous journey. As many as 30% were to pass away. And here's my reasoning. If the enslaved people passed away, after being bought, but before they were sold, the slave traders lost money. If you need me to explain that more, please come see me during tutoring hours. I'm happy to explain how I got there. All right, let's flip on the back. We're almost done. All right, crops such as sugarcane require a great growing climate. We're on number 7. So if I look back over at crops, let's see. High demand such as sugarcane. The highly arable environment for crops in demand such as sugarcane. All right, was there anything else? Let me check the back real quick. I'm pretty sure that would be a great piece of evidence to cite. But you can also cite this. The land was great at agriculture. The main source of income for the European plantation owners would be from sugarcane. All right, so it's definitely true. And I would say either paragraph 1 or paragraph, what was that? Paragraph 6. Either one of those would work. I'm going to use paragraph 1. So it said, highly arable land I'm sorry, it's not land, it's environment. Environment for crops. In demand, such as sugarcane. All right. 8. The transatlantic slave trade changed Latin American culture. All right, well, I know exactly where to look for this. Go to the back page. The lasting impact. Remember I had you kind of draw something around this or draw your eye to it somehow? Well, this is why. The lasting impact of this slave trade is currently seen today. And this is asking, transatlantic slave trade changed Latin American culture. The idea is, if the transatlantic slave trade had never happened, if it never occurred, Europeans and enslaved Africans did not arrive in the New World, they did not settle, they did not bring their diseases over to the Native American populations, if they never began to trade, if they never just set foot over here, would Latin America still be the same today if they never had set foot here? And Latin America definitely would not be the same. Their culture would be changed completely. It would be more authentic to what they lived in the 14, 15, 1600s without European or African interference. So, the transatlantic slave trade changed Latin American culture? Big T for true. All right, and I'm going to cite that paragraph 8. All right, moving on to set 3. This one's based on opinions. So yes, I'm going to have to use citations from the article, but I'm also going to have to use my brain, my opinions to answer these. So let's look at this. People will take shortcuts to success. All right, thinking about the transatlantic slave trade. What did they use the slaves for? Agriculture. They wanted to grow crops, they wanted to profit, but they didn't want to do the hard work. So they got people that they could control to do the work for them. So absolutely, I think that's true. Because, and let me go back here so that I can give you an actual quote. Let's see. We'll see here. Okay. First of all, a lot of the land, blah, blah, blah. So, in paragraph 2, thirdly, the work was not easy. All right. So, because paragraph 1, the farming, and I'm putting that in parentheses just so that I know looking back, farming was not easy. And let's see. I'm looking for something that could say something similar to the effect of, so they looked for people to do the work for them, but I'm not finding a quote that specifically says this. But I can still say that because I do have my citation. The work was not easy. So the Europeans and I have my answer for number 9. Let's look at 11. Indigenous Americans would still be slaves if they were immune from European diseases. All right, well, it is true that 90% would die from European diseases, and that was definitely a lot, like a lot. But that still left 10% of the Indigenous Americans alive. And they could have been enslaved, but according to the article, many natives were used to the land and could easily escape the plantation economy. So the Europeans had to look for a better alternative. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to say false. Because not all natives died from diseases. But let me specify, European diseases. %90 did. According to, see, I'm throwing in my citation here. According to paragraph 3. But many ran away and escaped. Also, there are no native slaves today. Even for the ones that survived. Let's look at 10. The sale of Africans by their leaders helped weaken Africa to later European invaders. Did I just spoil some of 7th grade? All right, this one's kind of a throwaway. All right, and I'm not going to answer this one. I'm going to let you think about this. I did all the other ones with you, but this one I'm going to leave blank because it is something that you're going to look at next year. In 7th grade, y'all are going to be studying Asia and Africa, and this is going to be a huge question that you're going to have to answer. So think about this question, answer it as best as you can, and we will talk about it next year. Alright, well, I hope that this video was helpful. Please feel free to review it, rewind it, pause it, go back, listen to it again, listen to it before the midterm or final. Whenever you need to review, please come back and watch this video. Every minute that you guys are watching it, I had to sit here and record it. So definitely had some work go into it. You guys are putting in the work on your end, and we'll all be better off and have higher grades because of it. So again, thank you guys for watching this video. And by the way, if you made it all the way through the video, meaning you watched it mostly beginning to end, come tell me the phrase. All right, and I'm going to write this down so that you see it. All right. Come tell me the phrase. I Like Gilmore Girls. That's a TV show that aired in the early 2000s, probably before y'all were born or while y'all were growing up, that I watched and I really liked it. But I doubt many of you have seen it. So if you can tell me this phrase, I like Gilmore Girls, I will, all right, and here's the good part, replace lowest classwork grade with 100%. All right. So like I said at the beginning of this video, if you watched all the way through, maybe I'll give you some bonus points or something. And this is my way of doing that. So if you can come tell me the phrase, I like Gilmore Girls, because you watched all the way through this video, I'll replace your lowest classwork grade with a 100%. All right. Well, I will see you guys tomorrow, and have a really good evening. I hope that you enjoyed your digital learning day. Bye.